There is a version of going to work that is not dramatic, no shouting manager, no obvious injustice, no single moment you could point to and say, that is when it went wrong. Just the quiet, reliable weight of it. Every morning, every week, a weight you have learned to carry so automatically that you can no longer tell if it is normal or not. That question, is this just how work feels or is something actually wrong, is one of the most disorienting places a person can live, because the answer matters enormously, and nothing around you is helping you find it. Your colleagues seem to manage. Your performance reviews are fine. Nobody is telling you that something is wrong. And so you keep going. And the weight keeps being there. This video is not going to tell you to quit your job. It is going to do something more useful than that. It is going to give you 7 specific signs, not vague symptoms, but precise, named patterns that distinguish between work being hard and work being wrong for you. By the end of this, what you have been carrying without a name will have one. And that is where everything that comes next begins. Here is the thing about chronic career suffering that makes it so difficult to detect. It does not arrive all at once. It does not show up one morning and announce itself. It seeps in, gradually, over months and years. And the human nervous system, which is extraordinarily good at adaptation, treats it the same way it treats any persistent condition. It adjusts. It lowers the baseline. It begins to register the discomfort not as a signal to respond to, but as the new normal to operate within. This is not weakness. This is not lack of self-awareness. This is what intelligent, capable, high-functioning people do when the environment gives them no obvious exit and every reason to stay. They adapt. They perform. They get better at managing the gap between how they feel and how they need to appear. And somewhere in that process, quietly, without announcement, the question, is this wrong, stops being asked. Not because the answer changed. Because the question got buried under the competence required to keep going. Research on occupational dissatisfaction consistently shows that the people least likely to identify their own suffering are the ones performing best. Not because they are fine. Because the performance becomes the evidence they use against themselves. I'm functioning. I'm delivering. I got promoted. So this discomfort must be mine to manage, not a signal about the work. That logic is wrong. And the 7 signs that follow are the proof of why. What they actually represent is this. Your nervous system has been accurate this whole time. It has been sending a signal. You have just been trained by a culture that rewards endurance and pathologizes dissatisfaction to treat that signal as noise. So here are the 7 signs. They are not listed in order of severity. They are listed in order of visibility, starting with the ones that are easiest to notice on the surface, moving toward the ones that are harder to admit because they live closer to the center of who you are. If you recognize yourself in any 3 of these, that is not coincidence. That is your signal. Sign 1. Sunday evenings have a texture that weekday evenings do not. Not just tiredness, not just not wanting the weekend to end. Something more specific. A low, flat dread that arrives around 4 or 5 in the afternoon and does not lift until you are deep enough into Monday to be functioning again. Anyone who has been in this knows exactly what that texture feels like. It is not about needing more rest. It is the body's honest preview of what it knows is coming. Sign 2. You have become genuinely skilled at something you no longer care about. This one is more disorienting than it sounds, because the standard narrative says competence and fulfillment track together, that getting good at something produces satisfaction. For a lot of people in this position, the opposite happened. They got better at the work, received more recognition, were trusted with more of it. And somewhere in that progression, the gap between what they are capable of and what they actually care about became the defining experience of their professional life. Skill without meaning is its own kind of trap. And it is one that very few people will help you name, because from the outside it looks like success. Sign 3. You have started counting things. Days until the weekend, weeks until a vacation, hours until the meeting ends, not occasionally, habitually. Time counting is not laziness. It is what the mind does when the present moment offers nothing it wants to stay in. It is a coping mechanism for a gap that has not been named yet. Studies on engagement at work show that active time counting is one of the earliest behavioral signals of what researchers call psychological withdrawal. Not from laziness, but from sustained misalignment between a person's values and their daily reality. The counting is not the problem. The counting is the report. Sign 4. The version of you that exists at work and the version of you that exists everywhere else are increasingly different people. At work, you are competent, measured, professional, appropriate. At home, or with certain friends, or in certain moments, you are something else entirely. Funnier, more direct, more curious, more alive. And the distance between those two versions has been growing. This is what the channel calls the performance tax. The daily energy cost of maintaining a professional identity that no longer fits. It is not just exhausting. It is specifically the exhaustion of performing a self you have outgrown. And it compounds. Every day of performance is a small withdrawal from something that does not automatically replenish. Sign 5. Good news at work does not land the way it used to. A promotion, a raise, positive feedback, a successful project. Things that should feel like wins, and instead produce a few hours of relief, followed by the return of the same flatness. This is one of the signs people are most ashamed of, because it looks indistinguishable from ingratitude from the outside. But it is not ingratitude. It is the specific experience of receiving a reward in a currency you no longer value. The reward is real. The problem is that you are no longer playing the game it belongs to. Sign 6. You have stopped imagining a future in this work. Not dramatically. You have not written a resignation letter in your head. But when you try to picture yourself in 5 years doing this, the image is either blank or actively uncomfortable. Earlier in your career, there was probably some version of forward momentum, a next role, a goal, a reason to keep building. That forward momentum is gone. Not because ambition died. Because ambition requires a direction that matters to you. And the quiet version, the one you do not say out loud, is that this direction stopped mattering somewhere along the way, and you are not sure exactly when. Sign 7. This is the one that is hardest to say. You have started wondering if this feeling would follow you anywhere you went, not as an occasional worry, as a recurring, quiet fear. What if I leave and feel exactly this in the next place? What if the problem isn't the job? What if it's me? That fear is worth sitting with for a moment, because it is the sign that contains all the others. It is what happens when the normalization has been going on long enough that the suffering feels like a feature of the self rather than a feature of the situation. It is the sign that says, this has gone on long enough that you are starting to lose the thread between who you are and what you have been asked to perform. Here is what those 7 signs taken together actually mean. They are not evidence that you are difficult to satisfy. They are not evidence that you are weak or ungrateful or insufficiently committed to the work. They are evidence that your signal has been accurate. Your nervous system has been doing its job correctly this entire time. It noticed the misalignment. It reported it through the Sunday dread, through the flatness after the good news, through the growing gap between who you are at work and who you are everywhere else. The problem is not that the signal was wrong. The problem is that the culture around high-achieving, capable adults has very little language for this kind of signal, and a lot of language for pushing through it. Not broken. Misaligned, those are not the same thing. Broken implies the problem is internal and permanent. Misaligned means the problem is relational. It is about fit, not about character, and fit can be changed. The distinction between those two sentences is not small. Living on one side of it and the other are genuinely different experiences. And here is the specific thing that distinguishes career misalignment from ordinary dissatisfaction. Misalignment gets louder over time, not quieter. Ordinary dissatisfaction from a hard stretch of work tends to ease when the stretch ends. Misalignment does not ease. It waits patiently through the vacation, through the project ending, through the promotion. And then it is still there. If you have noticed that pattern, that the relief is always temporary and the flatness always returns, that is the clearest sign of all. If this video has named something real for you, the natural question that follows is not, what do I do about my career? That question is too large to answer in one sitting. The more useful question is, which specific pattern is mine? Because there are 5 distinct career pain patterns, and they have different causes, different mechanisms, and different first steps. There is a short audit in the description, 10 minutes, no fluff, that identifies exactly which pattern applies to your situation and tells you what to do first. Not what to do eventually, what to do first. That is the link in the description. Naming this is not the same as solving it. That is worth saying plainly. Because one of the ways intelligent people protect themselves from disappointment is by dismissing the value of naming things. I already know something is wrong. Knowing it more precisely doesn't change anything. That objection is understandable, and it is wrong. Here is why naming matters. The mechanism that keeps people in misaligned careers is not primarily lack of courage or lack of direction. It is the absence of a distinction. When the suffering has no name, when it is just ambient, chronic, unclassified discomfort, the nervous system has no lever to pull. It cannot make a decision about something it cannot classify. It can only manage. And managing is exactly what the 7 signs look like from the inside. The moment you can say specifically, this is misalignment, not a personal defect, the decision-making architecture changes. Not dramatically, not immediately, but the question shifts from what is wrong with me to what is wrong with this fit? And those two questions lead to completely different places. You already know enough to take the next step. Not the leap, not the plan, not the decision. The next step is simply this. Stop treating the signal as noise. You have been receiving accurate information for longer than you have been willing to admit. Receiving it accurately, letting it mean what it means, is the first honest step. The fear that the feeling would follow you anywhere, sign 7, deserves a direct answer. Sometimes, yes, there are patterns a person carries regardless of context, and those are worth exploring separately. But the research on career transitions is consistent on one point. People who leave situations of genuine misalignment and move toward work that is aligned with their actual values do not report the same flatness. They report difficulty, real, sometimes significant difficulty. They do not report the particular emptiness of performing a life that is not theirs. That distinction matters. The fear that you are the problem is almost never the accurate diagnosis. It is what misalignment sounds like when it has been normalized long enough. If what this video named is something you want to go deeper on, the Career Clarity Audit in the description is the next step. 10 minutes to identify which of the 5 specific patterns is yours and what to do about it first. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Which of the 7 signs landed hardest for you, and how long have you been carrying it without a name for it? Before you move on, there is one thing worth taking from this video. Not as advice, but as a factual reframe of your situation. The version of you that adapted to this work, that learned to manage the Sunday dread, that got better and better at performing the version of yourself that was rewarded, that stopped asking, is this right for me? Because there was no clean time or space to answer it. That person was not failing. They were being responsive. The environment was clear about what it valued. You responded to what was clear. Before you knew what you were being shaped into, you did what capable, intelligent people do in systems that reward endurance. You endured. The dissatisfaction you are feeling now, the Sunday wait, the flatness after the good news, the growing distance between who you are at work and who you are everywhere else, that is not a sign that something is newly wrong. It is a sign that something has been accurately reported for a long time, and you are finally, in this moment, letting it mean what it means. You are not someone who cannot be satisfied. You are someone whose signal has been accurate for longer than you have been willing to admit, and who has just, in the last 15 minutes, gotten honest about it. The difference between those two sentences is not cosmetic. Living on one side of that distinction and the other are genuinely different experiences of the same life. You have been on the wrong side of it, not because of a failure of character, but because the culture around professional success has almost no language for what you have been living. This video tried to give you some of that language. What you do with it is yours to decide. Not broken, misaligned. Carry that one.